Hey everybody, if you've made it this far, we finally arrived at that moment where we talk about that arm that slings the disc at the target. We're using all of the preceding steps to help generate additional force on the disc, and the arm and the disc are just a passenger on the ride. But we need this module because quite a few things can go wrong in connecting the lesson for today to the prior lessons that we've reviewed. So there are several ways that you can engage arm mechanics that are either relatively weak, not transferring all that force you just generated from the ground up into the disc, or are going to increase your likelihood of injuries, especially to the elbow and the shoulder. So fortunately, there are a couple of specific things that we can do to ensure that we get both maximal force on the disc by whipping the arm toward the target, and to mitigate the risk of injury through the repetitive stresses or the maximal stress of a high-speed throwing motion.
Okay, I wanted to avoid a really technical description, but I wanted to clarify just a couple things about this sling or slingshot effect in the whip. So the sling effect is caused by your center of gravity being driven forward. So assisted by gravity, your drive leg is going to drive you toward the target. And because you have this loose arm in a reach back or backswing, the weight of that arm and disc are going to cause a stretching action in my back pictured here. And that stretching action will then cause what is called a myotactic reflex. So when muscles are stretched, they will reflexively start to contract. And when built atop the rest of a proficient disc golf swing, it will continue to accelerate that muscle. And so you're literally getting a bit of a rubber band elastic-like effect in the muscle, and it contracts. The whip is your entire body. So I end with this module on the slinging arm because we need to have some reasonably proficient basis to get ground forces and a gravity assist to come up that kinematic chain, and then we're just carrying that through this sling-like effect to accelerate the arm, whipping the disc toward the target. Now we can talk about a few primary backswing styles. Throughout this series you've seen me use this pendulum style. I use that because I found it a bit easier to learn how to sync up the various pieces of my body. So I'm swinging back and forth as we've discussed before. You can see my hips rocking up toward the target and then back away. And when I leverage off that drive leg toward the target, I'm getting a bit of that stretch reflex up through my back. And so from this view you can see that I'm swinging under and away from my body. And unlike rounding, what's happening is I'm going to have an axis over the plant knee and around that shoulder, that when they're stacked atop one another, it'll swing around toward the target. So just here, a quick walkthrough on the X step, swinging up, down, back, away, and the plant receives the weight ready to load up that slinging action and whip of the arm. Another backswing style is the traditional reach back or walk around the disc style. So you can still wind up with a bit of a rocking motion or a sway, which helps just to sync up again that hip rock back and forth from the drive leg to the plant leg and back again. And that reach back length, if you're standing still, you can modify how much you load that shoulder back. I suggest trying to get a full shoulder load, as we'll talk about later. Just because that helps you to get the optimal range of motion for a distance drive. But you can also hold the reach back at the shorter distance. Overthrow Disc Golf has a good montage of Drew Gibson where you can see he modulates how far he reaches back or reaches behind, proportional to how far he wants to throw, like many pros do. So here's just an easy walkthrough. This would be loading up maybe a middle distance drive for me, if I were to use a traditional reach back style. Then we can use the wide rail. The wide rail is a variant of the reach back where, just as it sounds, you leave the disc out further to the side away from your body. So it's a little bit hard to perceive from this motion, but I can do it from the pendulum into the backswing and end up in a wide rail. You can do it with the traditional style without the pendulum. Here from the other view, reaching out and away. So I'm really clearing that disc out wide. When I would swing through, it will come back in on a curved path on the nonlinear disc path toward the target. So how do we hold the disc in the backswing? Beware starting in this wing down position with the disc hanging toward the earth. And the reason for that is if you start in that position, my shoulder will be rotating externally, which is giving me less leverage on the disc, so I'm losing a little bit of force there, and it puts tremendous strain on the front of the shoulder joint. I've had shoulder issues before when I've been instructed to use that grip. This pattern is okay. You'll actually see pros using this. They're going to start in something closer to flat, and they'll be rotating that shoulder internally. It's providing good leverage on the disc, and it's relatively safe for that shoulder. If the wing is slanted a bit and you're rotating internally, that's also okay. Same shoulder protection. You'll see Simon Lizotte have a relatively slanted swing, but if you watch closely, he'll be coiling the arm into this internal rotation of the shoulder pattern. Now, one of the very important principles of getting a good whip effect and loading up that sling effect is to make sure that this shoulder reaches back behind the rear hip in the full backswing. So if you're powering up a big shot, you want to make sure that you get good leverage behind that hip with an extension like this. Here from the other angle, so you can see the back hip cocking up and backward, and you can see that shoulder coming down to clear the rear hip. I'm exaggerating a little bit here just to emphasize the motion. Your arm is going to follow a path such that you could smash a nail on the wall over your shoulder. Practice swinging the arm wide, and you can try that nice and easy. We don't want to force the arm to coil up. More on that in a moment. Here again, a nice, easy, wide motion. Let the shoulder lead everything else in that swing. Your closed shoulder is going to lead that swing, and then the disc and arm weight will pull you around into follow through. So from the back, the muscle's just stretched, and that shoulder's leading the swing all the way through. Shoulder leading elbow, leading wrist, and the hand will be gripping the disc, ripping that nose around to impart maximum force and a high level of spin on the disc. You don't have to think about spin. It should be a consequence of the mechanics of the swinging arm and your grip on the disc. One more time here. Nice and wide and easy. So let's talk more about swinging wide and not forcing the pocket to form. This is, I think, a very common and confusing problem in the disc golf backhand. Centripetal force is going to create that pocket. You can watch as I speed up that the disc is collapsing in toward my body. I'm not actively doing that in any way. I'm just speeding the disc up, and because of the weight of my arm and my disc leveraged against my body, the pocket is forming and rebounds out toward the target. So that arm swings wide, pulling me through and around. Load it up, swings wide, pulling my body around into follow through. Reinforce this motion. Many of us have these learned habits to force the pocket or use other mechanisms in the arm that are muscling up or getting in the way. Here from the back angle, as you speed up, that would be something like the path that would form the pocket. Backswing, in toward the pocket, out and around toward the target, pulling you into follow through. Backswing, speed up into the pocket, around into follow through. Let that coil happen automatically. So let's get slinging. I have a couple dingle arms here again. Loosen up. Let that arm accelerate your slinging arm forward. Move in different directions. Again, reinforce the idea that the weight is going to be driving the action of the arm. And swinging down and up toward gravity is a good way to reinforce this habit. So I still do this all the time when I'm warming up. You can move along that more lateral plane. Notice my elbow is folding in, but that's because of the speed and the weight of my arm. I'm not trying to make that pocket form. And I can try to swing it wider to prevent the coiling from occurring, kind of try to find a sweet spot where you find a nice easy flow just like this through the swing. I tend to aim high just to feel connected to gravity when I practice this. Of course, you can change the angle, and I recommend practicing all angles. The key here is that you want to make sure that that swing path is always coming back around, led by your shoulder, like I'm illustrating here and had shown before. That's the maximal leverage and safest position for your arm to swing when moving at high speeds. So if you grab a disc, think about slashing or smashing with the disc, not throwing the disc. So there's a target over my right shoulder or up high over my right shoulder here, and I want to let my weight sling that disc around along different paths at different angles. Aim high, aim low, aim flat to target, hyzer and hyzer. Just move around in all of the motions and all paths to the target. Again, keep reinforcing that weight is driving the sling. The weight is driving the sling. Don't let that arm get too active and muscled, and sometimes they pop out accidentally. So much force. All right, so just giving you a few different motion patterns to keep loosened up. Keep moving with your weight. You can drop and squat it into that plant leg. You can try keeping it relatively high. Slash down, back up and away, close shoulder. A little bit flatter, still upward trajectory. A little bit higher. You can come over top and take a full Anheuser style swing. Get used to that momentum, being led with the weight, then pulling up and away from you. Feels a little bit unnatural for many players at first, but a good way to get the intuition for a powerful Anheuser. Let's talk about the hand and grip. So many people talk about this. You want to align the disc with the crease of the hand. So if I pick my disc up here, between that index and middle finger, line it up, make sure it gets to the crease in the back of the hand. I sometimes use my index finger to set that position to make sure it's aligned and grip it like this. This is my modified fan grip. I have the index finger and pinky gripping. Index finger can pull away and the rear fingers can still lock it. 3-finger power grip is popular. I've also seen 4th-finger power grips. That index finger is a little bit splayed forward relative to the other fingers because of the orientation of the disc in my hand. Now, wrist mechanics are crucial. This is where you can lose a lot of leverage on the disc. Pour the coffee is ulnar deviation, and it causes your wrist to be relatively stiff. If you don't have deviation, you're going to have floppy wrist syndrome. It's going to flop back and forth. You don't have a lot of good leverage in the disc. You can see here you have more leverage, and the tendon bounce is allowing you to kind of rebound that disc automatically as you swing through the pocket. If you don't pour your nose up, if you pour your nose down. Here from the other angle, no pour is nose up, and if you pour, ulnar deviation results in it being nose down. Okay, so we alluded to it before, but the most common power pocket mistake is trying to make a hinge rather than let centripetal force whip the disc through and create the pocket. So this sort of chicken wing or forced pocket position is not what we want. We don't want to put that elbow forward, which disallows the shoulder from leading and getting leverage. Gate hinges are not whips. So instead we want to avoid the collapsing of this elbow, right? So if I watch again through the swing, it's a very weak low leverage mechanism. If instead you just try to swing wide and let centripetal force pull that elbow inward, creating the pocket, you can see much more force coming through my body there toward the ground. So I can swing down like this, and you can see force coming through. If I pull it in like this, you can see the whole pocket sort of collapses and I lose leverage through the chain. And very easily a proper whip will put significant force on the disc.